You ever have someone ruin something pure, like kids just being kids? Because that's exactly what happened to me one quiet Saturday morning. See? My daughters, 6 and 9, had been begging all week to do something grown up. They'd seen those little lemonade stands in cartoons and thought it'd be the coolest thing ever. So I said sure. We grabbed a folding table from the garage, some paper cups, and a couple of markers. They made these adorable little signs, crooked letters, drawings of lemons with sunglasses. The whole thing. We mixed up their grandma's old recipe. Half the sugar, double the love, and they were ready to roll. They stood there in the driveway, sun hats on, grinning like they just opened a 5-star restaurant. 50 cents a cup. They shouted every time someone walked by. And the best part? People were actually stopping. Neighbors smiled, waved, a jogger even dropped $1 and said, "Keep the change." It was wholesome, simple. One of those rare moments where you just think, yeah, life's good. But of course, peace doesn't last long when you live under the rule of an HOA, especially one run by Karen. Pink suit, matching lipstick, clipboard like it's a weapon, and that walk. You could spot her power strut from a mile away. I saw her coming before the girls did. She crossed the street like she was inspecting a crime scene. Didn't even look at me, went straight for the kids. "Do you have a permit for this?" She barked. My oldest froze mid-pour, eyes wide, like she'd just been asked for her driver's license. I laughed a little under my breath, thinking, okay, she's got to be joking. So I walked over and said, "Morning, Karen. It's just a lemonade stand." She gave me that look, the one that says she's already decided she's right, and snapped, "HOA regulations strictly prohibit unauthorized vending on common property." I blinked. They're 6, but she wasn't listening. She was already pulling out her phone, turning her back to us. And before I could say another word, she said, loud and dramatic, "Yes, hello. I'd like to report an illegal vendor operating near Maple Court. Yes, minors. No, I don't know who their guardian is." That's when I realized she was serious. She actually called 911 on a lemonade stand. And in that moment, standing there watching my daughters look up at me like, "Are we in trouble, Dad?" I felt it. That mix of disbelief and quiet anger, because I knew exactly what was coming next. And what Karen didn't know was that she just made the biggest mistake of her HOA career. Now, let me back up a bit. When we first moved into this neighborhood, the HOA sounded harmless enough. You know, just the usual keep your grass short and your house beige kind of thing. I figured it was just paperwork and occasional emails about trash pickup. But then I met her, Karen, the self-appointed queen of the cul-de-sac. Pink suit, pearls, and a clipboard that probably had more power in her mind than the U.S. Constitution. From day one, she made it clear she didn't just enforce the rules, she was the rules. You couldn't breathe without her having an opinion about the air quality. She fined my next-door neighbor $50 because he used the wrong shade of mulch. And when the family across the street forgot to pull in their trash cans before sundown, boom, written warning taped to their mailbox like a scarlet letter. Once she even left a note on my windshield because my tires were touching the curb line. I wish I was making that up. So yeah, when my girls set up that lemonade stand, I already knew Karen was going to sniff it out like a bloodhound with a badge. But here's the thing she didn't know. That little stand wasn't just some weekend hobby. See, my precinct, the local police department, was running a summer fundraiser. Every year we collect donations for youth outreach programs, summer camps, mentorships, after-school sports. It's one of the few things that actually brings people together around here. My daughters had overheard me talking about it one night at dinner. Next morning, they came running in with crayons and a big idea. "Dad, what if we sell lemonade and give the money to the kids who don't have bikes? How do you say no to that?" So, I helped them mix up a few gallons, got them set up out front, and told them I'd handle the grown-up stuff. Just focus on having fun. And for the first 15 minutes, that's exactly what it was. A little moment of pride, a little sunshine, a little normal. Then came the pink tornado. Karen, storming across the street, clipboard out like she was serving a warrant. Only, problem? This time, she wasn't just picking a fight with a dad. She was about to pick a fight with the entire police department, and she didn't even know it yet. Karen didn't walk, she charged. You could hear her heels clicking on the pavement like a countdown to chaos. My girls were mid-laughter, pouring lemonade for one of the neighbors, when she slammed that clipboard down on their table like it was a badge of authority. "Excuse me, young ladies," she said, her voice sugar-coated with fake politeness. "Do you have authorization to sell food and beverages on HOA property?" My kids froze. You could see the confusion on their faces. They weren't used to being talked to like that, especially not by an adult in a pink suit yelling about permits. I heard the whole thing from the porch. Coffee in hand, still half asleep, I thought maybe I was mishearing it. But nope, she was dead serious. So I walked over. Calm. Because when you've dealt with real emergencies for a living, a lady throwing a tantrum over lemonade barely ranks. "Karen," I said, keeping my voice steady. "It's a lemonade stand. They're raising money for the police youth fund. No harm done." She crossed her arms so tight I thought her pearls might snap. "That's not my concern," she said sharply. "HOA guidelines prohibit any commercial activity on community sidewalks without prior approval." I blinked at her. "Karen, they're 6 and 9 years old. The only approval they needed was from their mom to use the kitchen." She didn't flinch. "Then it's your responsibility for violating the covenant, not theirs." Behind me, I could hear my youngest sniffle. Her bottom lip was shaking, the kind of face kids make when they don't understand why someone's being cruel. That's when my patience thinned. I said, "You're really going to harass children for selling lemonade to help other kids?" Karen didn't even look at me. She turned on her heel and said loudly enough for every porch on the block to hear, "Well, if you won't enforce the rules, I'll let the sheriff sort it out." Then she did it. She actually dialed 911, right there in front of my daughters. She stepped a few feet back, hand on her hip, phone to her ear, pacing like she was reporting a major crime. "Yes, I'd like to report an unauthorized commercial operation," she said, her tone full of righteous fury. "2 minors are selling unlicensed beverages without proper sanitation or HOA consent. I swear." I almost spit out my coffee. A few neighbors peeked out from their windows, some laughing quietly, others shaking their heads. They'd all been on the wrong end of Karen's clipboard at some point. But this was a new record. My oldest whispered, "Dad, are we in trouble?" I knelt down and said, "Sweetheart, don't worry. She's just making a big mistake." Because what Karen didn't realize was that the 911 call she just made wasn't going to bring the help she wanted. It was going to bring the truth straight to her front door, and it was going to be delivered by people who already knew exactly who she was. It still blows my mind. 10 minutes. That's all it took. 10 minutes after Karen dialed 911, a county patrol SUV rolled into our cul-de-sac, lights flashing like there'd been a break-in at Fort Knox. The whole neighborhood started peeking out from windows and porches. Some were recording, others whispering. Everyone knew when those flashing lights showed up, it usually meant one thing. Karen had gone too far again. Out stepped 2 deputies. I recognized them right away. Guys I'd worked with for years back when I was still active on the force. You could see the smirk on one of their faces before he even shut the door. Karen ran straight toward them, heels clicking like gunfire. Clipboard in one hand, phone in the other, her voice already climbing 2 octaves higher than usual. "Officers!" she barked. "Thank you for arriving so quickly. I need these unauthorized vendors removed immediately. They're selling beverages on HOA property without a permit." The shorter deputy leaned toward the taller one and muttered under his breath, just loud enough for me to hear, "Is that her again?" The other one nodded. "Yep, same Karen from Maple Court. They'd dealt with her before, I could tell from their faces. Karen didn't notice the eye rolls or the stifled laughter. She was too busy pointing at my daughter's little folding table like it was a crime scene. "These children are illegally soliciting," she said, jabbing her pen toward the lemonade pitcher. "We can't allow this type of activity here. It sets a dangerous precedent for the neighborhood." The taller deputy turned his head slowly, scanning the scene. 2 kids, paper cups, a hand-painted sign that read, 50C, all money goes to police youth fund. Then he looked back at Karen, then at me, then at the kids again. Finally, he said, "Ma'am, you called us for this." Karen straightened up. Of course I did. HOA policy is very clear, he cut her off gently. And we enforce laws, not HOA policy. You could see her expression twist, like her brain just crashed mid-sentence. Then the deputy turned to me. Sir, this your stand? I nodded. Yep, my daughters wanted to raise money for the department's youth program. Thought it'd be good for the community. He glanced back at the little table, then cracked a grin. Well, he said, looks like the community's doing just fine. His partner added, far as I can tell, the only thing being violated here is common sense. I swear. The look on Karen's face could have curdled the lemonade right there. She crossed her arms, sputtering. So, you're not going to take action? The deputy said, we already did. We showed up. We saw the situation. And now we're leaving. He tipped his hat at my girls. Keep up the good work, ladies. Then to me, tell the department the kids' fundraiser's off to a strong start. Karen just stood there, frozen, like someone had unplugged her from reality. As the deputies walked back to their SUV, one of them leaned out the window before driving off and said, next time, maybe call us when someone's actually in danger, not when someone's serving lemonade. The crowd that had gathered chuckled softly. Even a few neighbors started clapping. Karen didn't say another word. She just spun around, stormed off toward her house, and slammed the door so hard it echoed down the block. She thought the law was on her side, but turns out even the law wanted a glass of lemonade. You'd think after being shut down by two deputies, Karen would have walked away, but nope. If there's one thing I've learned about HOA power trips, it's that logic doesn't stop them. Embarrassment does, and she wasn't quite embarrassed enough yet. As the patrol car started to roll away, Karen marched right up again, clutching her clipboard like it was a legal weapon. You can't just let them break HOA policy, she snapped. Her voice cracked halfway through the word policy, but she powered through it like she was giving a closing argument in court. The taller deputy sighed, leaned one hand on his belt, and said calmly, Ma'am, this event isn't against any law. In fact, it's sanctioned by the county police department. Then he grinned. I'm literally on the flyer. Karen blinked. Flyer? She looked around like she'd just realized she walked into the wrong meeting. Oh, you didn't see it? I said, keeping my tone friendly. Maybe too friendly. I walked over to the porch, grabbed a few copies of the fundraiser flyer we'd printed earlier in the week, and handed one to her. It was bright yellow. Bold letters at the top. Support your local youth. Police Summer Fundraiser, Community Lemonade Day. Right below it was the county badge, the precinct seal, and a list of participating neighborhoods, including ours. The deputy leaned over her shoulder, pretending to read it aloud like it was story time. Looks like your HOA was invited to sponsor, ma'am. But according to this, nobody from the board replied. Karen froze. Her mouth opened, then closed again. The wheels in her head were spinning fast, but no gears were catching. You could almost see the panic start to form, the kind that hits when someone realizes they just called the cops on the cops' fundraiser. I wasn't aware of that, she stammered, her voice suddenly small. There must have been a miscommunication. I crossed my arms. Yeah, probably the kind where you didn't read your emails. The deputy smirked. Ma'am, this email went out to every HOA contact in the district. You're the HOA president, right? Karen nodded weakly. Then you got it. There was a long, delicious silence after that. A couple of neighbors who'd gathered nearby were trying hard not to laugh. One guy whispered, so she called 911 on charity lemonade? Another replied, classic Karen. Karen's face turned red, then pink, then practically HOA magenta. She clutched the flyer like it was radioactive. She tried one last weak line of defense. Well, I was just doing my duty to protect community integrity. The deputy tilted his head. Ma'am, your duty involved calling emergency services over two kids selling lemonade for a police fundraiser. Then his tone dropped. That firm, measured voice every officer has when they're about to make a point that lands. You know, false 911 calls are a serious issue. Waste of public resources, can even carry fines. That hit her like a brick. You could see the blush shoot right up to her hairline. I didn't mean it like that, she said. glancing around, realizing everyone was still watching. "I was just following procedure," the deputy chuckled. "Well, next time, maybe follow the flyer instead, I swear." The sound of muffled laughter from the neighbors might have been the sweetest soundtrack I'd ever heard. Karen mumbled something about having a meeting to attend and started backing away slowly, clutching that flyer like it was Exhibit A in her own trial. Her heels clicked all the way down the sidewalk, sharp, uneven, and just desperate enough to sound like defeat. One of the kids from next door called out, "Hey, Miss Karen, you want a cup?" She didn't even turn around. The deputy winked at my daughters. "Looks like your first customer changed her mind." Then to me, he said quietly, "She's going to avoid this block for a long while." He wasn't wrong. She thought she'd caught us breaking rules, but instead, she busted herself breaking common sense. By that afternoon, word had spread faster than a yard sale rumor. Everyone in the neighborhood knew. I swear, the moment one person posted about it, the whole block turned into a mini media circus, lemonade cups in hand. People I hadn't seen in months started showing up just to support the cause. One guy from 3 streets over pulled up in his golf cart, tossed a $20 into the jar and said, "Heard you're serving justice with a slice of lemon." Even a few off-duty officers swung by, still in their department polos, grabbing cups, taking selfies with my daughters, and dropping donations. By the end of the day, my girls had raised over $400 for the youth program. Not bad for a couple of kids violating HOA policy. Meanwhile, Karen vanished. No HOA patrols, no warning slips, not even her usual daily reminder emails about trash bins or mailbox colors. Radio silence. But the real action wasn't happening in person. It was online. That night, the neighborhood Facebook group was on fire. Someone posted a photo of Karen mid-lecture at the lemonade stand. Her finger pointed, sunglasses on, looking like she was directing air traffic. Right below it was a screenshot of the police fundraiser flyer. Then came the comments. Did she seriously call 911 on lemonade? She really said community integrity about a bake sale? One guy even turned her into a meme. Big bold letters that said, "Lemonade Karen, defender of HOA purity." By the next morning, the post had over 200 reactions and a full-on comment war. But for once, everyone was on the same side. Even the neighbors who usually backed the HOA were laughing. Someone wrote, "I didn't think I'd ever say this, but I actually agree with Mark this time." For the first time in years, the neighborhood wasn't divided. Everyone, and I mean everyone, agreed she'd gone way too far, and honestly, it felt good seeing people finally push back. Not out of anger, just out of sheer collective common sense. Karen's power had officially hit its expiration date. A few days later, my inbox pinged with a long, painfully formal email from the HOA board. Subject line, "Clarification regarding community fundraising events." Yeah, that's how you know they were scrambling. The email went on for 3 paragraphs trying to smooth things over. They said the HOA fully supports charitable efforts conducted in good faith, and that this whole thing had been a simple misunderstanding. No names mentioned, of course. But everyone knew who it was about. It was the most passive-aggressive apology I'd ever read, like watching someone try to mop up a flood with a paper towel. But the truth? I later found out it wasn't just clarification. The sheriff himself had called their office earlier that week. Apparently, he politely reminded the board that interfering with a lawful police charity wasn't a great PR move, especially when one of their members had wasted 911 resources over lemonade. After that call, the tone changed real quick. Karen suddenly took a leave of absence for personal reasons. Official story, stress management. Unofficial story, pure embarrassment. Neighbors said she couldn't even walk her dog without someone whispering "Lemonade Karen" under their breath. One woman told me she saw her at the grocery store. Karen turned around the second she noticed another neighbor from our street. Word spread that the board was reviewing her conduct, and since this wasn't the first time she'd been under fire, let's just say her days as HOA royalty were numbered. The same people who used to defend her were now quietly distancing themselves, like rats jumping ship before it sinks. For the first time in a long while, The neighborhood actually felt peaceful. No more surprise warnings. No more intimidation emails. Just normal people living normal lives. And honestly, it was refreshing watching the self-proclaimed HOA queen finally face her own rules. That lemonade stand still pops up every summer. Same corner of Maple Court, same old folding table, but now with brighter signs and a whole lot more traffic. My daughters have turned it into a neighborhood tradition. They call it Operation Squeezeback. Every year, they raise more money for the police youth program. And every year more people show up, neighbors, officers, even folks from the next subdivision over. Funny thing, some of the same HOA board members who stayed silent that day now swing by for a cup, smiling like they've always supported it. And you know what? I let them. Because that's what community should have been from the start. People supporting people, not policing them. Every time I watch my girls pour lemonade into those bright yellow cups, I think about that morning. About how one woman's obsession with control tried to crush a simple act of kindness, and how badly it backfired. Karen called 911 thinking she'd shut us down. But all she really did was give the story legs. Someone filmed the whole thing, posted it online, and it blew up. Now every year, local stations cover the lemonade stand that survived the HOA. And as for Karen, she hasn't been seen near our street since. No more clipboards, no more lectures, just silence. Maybe she moved. Maybe she finally realized that not everything needs her approval. Either way, every sip of that lemonade is a little sweeter now. Because it's not just about juice and sugar. It's about standing your ground without losing your kindness. When life gives you Karens, you make lemonade. And apparently you make a neighborhood stronger while you're at it. Subscribe if you think some people just need a chill pill instead of a clipboard.